Ladies, thank you very much for coming yet another event of our Big Ideas series. In this series, as you know, we invite some of the world's top thinkers on energy, policymakers, public figures, and today, for the first time, we have a public figure who comes from the private sector. In the last sessions, we started, in fact, with Mrs. Mary Robinson, the former president of Ireland. We have a couple of distinguished colleagues, such as Mr. Shevkovich, Mr. Panagiria, the Indian minister, and others. But today, for the first time, we are welcoming another important aspect of energy industry, namely the private business. And I am delighted to welcome today Mr. Claudio Descalzi, who is the CEO of Eni, one of the energy giants in the world that operates more than 80 countries. Mr. Descalzi was named the CEO of Eni in May 2014. I would say this is lucky, the appointment for Eni, for Italy, for the energy business. But perhaps for you, Claudio, it was when you appointed, the oil prices were about $100, and they are now about $40. It's a tough game in front of you to manage such a huge company under difficult circumstances, but we all know that Eni is one of the leading oil and gas companies around the world. Mr. Descalzi is an Eni man. He joined the company in 1981 as the oil and gas petroleum engineer. He worked in different projects in North Sea, but also many places in Africa, Libya, Nigeria, and Congo, and he has recently became a CEO, and before that, Claudio, you were the Chief Operating Officer of Eni, going through the different paths of this very company. In addition to energy, he is very active. He's a visiting fellow at the University of Oxford. He serves in the board of the coffee industry. This is the industry association in Italy. And now I also saw that he's in the board of director of the Fondazione Teatro alla Scala. So this is the artistic side of Claudia. We will hear from some opera, perhaps, from Claudia in a minute.
I don't think.
You don't think? Okay. But we welcome everything here. So this is now Eni, as I guess most of you know, it is especially in the last couple of months, if not years, we read in the headlines of newspapers the lots of discoveries that Eni has across the world, lots of success stories. But today I suggested that Mr. Descalzi will talk us about Africa. The company is present in 15 countries in Africa, has a production, oil and gas production, close to 1 million barrels per day, about 850 KBD, and as such, the biggest international energy company in Africa. Lots of projects for oil, gas, using oil and gas for electricity generation, off-grid applications, on-grid applications, and also working on the water availability, how to use energy for water availability, an area that we are also working a lot. Some of you may remember we made a report on the World Energy Outlook Special Report on Africa, and we have in fact presented in Rome, in Italy. And in that report we said there is a problem here in Africa. On one hand, Africa has huge oil, gas, renewable resources. perhaps one of the best endowed continent in the world. But at the same time, 2 out of 3 people in Africa, they have no access to energy, to electricity. And Eni is one of the companies to address that very problem. Now, we thought Mr. Descalzi, who spent a substantial part of his career in Africa and now on Africa, is going to talk us today on the topic African development and access to energy. He will tell us what are the challenges in Africa and what kind of activities Eni and the other companies have. This is a great honor for us, Mr. Descalzi, that you come here to talk to us, our ambassadors, our colleagues here. We are delighted to host you here, and we are very much looking forward to hear your insights, which will be followed by question and answers. But before that, I would like to invite all of you to welcome Mr. Claudio Descalzi to the International Energy Agency.
Good morning. Thank you, Fatih, for the nice word. It's really a great pleasure and honor to be the first private sector manager that is here with you to talk about a so important topic. So I want to really start thanking the International Energy Agency and Fatih Birol for giving me this opportunity to talk about a topic that is closer to my heart, that is Africa and its development. Eni started working in Africa in the 50s, and we were always strongly committed to its development, in particular access to energy. That was really a point, an initial point, also the reason of our success in Africa. So we are engaged in developing natural resources. That is our core business. But our choice has been not just to explore and develop and produce for exporting, but also give part of this energy, and especially gas, to increase the access to energy. And I think that in Africa we have a lot of energy, as you said, a lot of energy, renewable especially, but also oil and gas. So we have a big challenge, but a very strong opportunity to change the model of development. So as we said, Eni has always had a close link to Africa. We had been there since the early 50s, starting in Egypt. So we started in Egypt in 1954. That was the first country. And we initiated a long and positive cooperation. And today, we are the largest company in Africa. So we are the last one, and then year by year, we were able to increase our position and became the first company. So the question, are an Italian company that where oil and gas business is not a core business in Italy. We are producing, but it's not a core business. How can an Italian company become the first company in Africa? I think that there are two different moments, but the first moment is clearly linked to our first CEO, our first the person that built Eni, that is Enrico Mattei, and we can say that we were being able to do that through what we call Enrico Mattei formula. And what happened? What is this formula? Eni introduced this new model in Africa with the African government, and what we did, we increased the participation in the profit by creating 50-50 incorporated joint ventures. That was the new model. So we were in the company, we improved the contract. We started in Egypt, 50-50, but we create a company where the first party, so the national company, acting as a shareholder. So they don't just have royalties and tax, but also they could benefit directly from the profit oil and cost oil from the production directly. So we change this formula. We put in the contract also transfer of know-how, technology, and that improve greatly the condition of the contract. And also, we broadened the scope of our contract, and we put also sustainability goals, for example, education and health. So these new parameters, this new kind of improvement of the contract create a big impact and allow us to grow rapidly. It's clear that in this contract we also, for the first time, that at the very beginning, then in the 60s, in the 70s, we start talking about diversification of the economical model, of the domestic model, diversification with respect to the oil and gas. So we start telling to the countries we cannot put all our effort only on the oil and gas. We have also to diversify to make the oil and gas business more sustainable. So we start working on agriculture in some countries. It's clear it's not our core business, but it showed our engagement. And if you take commitment in an activity that is not your core business, in an activity where you don't make money, you became more credible. And also your company became more sustainable in the long run. And that's what we did. So this new model of cooperation, this new contractual model, spread rapidly. And other countries, not only Egypt, but Tunisia, Angola, Libya, Algeria, Nigeria, and Congo, were amongst the first countries that took advantage of this new contractual formula. So in the following decade, Eni invested in Africa and is continue growing. So we start with few barrels, and now we are producing 1 million, as an equity, we are producing 1 million barrels per day, and that makes us the first company. And we are operating more than 2 million barrels per day, oil and gas equivalent, so all together. And we are currently operating in 15 countries, and we are employing 17,000 people, and 95% of these 17,000 people are local staff. So that was part of the contract. So we took an engagement in this contract to gradually increase the local content, but not just in a formal way, but in a substantial way. I mean that most of our, for example, in Nigeria, we have 11 general managers, we have different companies, and 10 out of 11 are Nigerians. And that is growing the time. So now we reach 95%. That is really a very important, huge figures. The tested reserves, so reserves are what we call 3P, so P1, P2, P3. That means proven, possible, and probable. The tested reserves, where we have evidence, wells, and production that we have in Africa as equity account to about 7 billion barrels. So it's a huge amount of barrel that we found. And in terms of production, in Africa we produce more than 50% of our production in terms of equity production. It's clear that the recent discovery we made in big discovery in Mozambique, in Egypt, in Angola, Congo, Ghana. Just to give you some figures, in the last 7 years we discovered more than 12 billion barrels of oil equivalent of resources. And most of these discoveries has been in Africa. So supergiant in Mozambique, as you know, in Egypt, but also in Congo, in Ghana, in Angola. So we made really big discoveries, and we have been the company that discovered more reserves. And in the last 7 years, we discovered 2.4 times what we produced, against an average of the industry of 0.3. So an average, the industry discovered 0.03% of what they produce. We discovered 2.4. And that is also thanks to the big discovery we made in Africa. In the next 4 years, we're going to invest in Africa about 20 billion euro, and that represents about 60% of our investment in the 4-year period. And surely in the long term, we're going to invest much more because we have to develop the big field, the giant field we found, that is oil and gas, but mostly gas. Now I'd like to say a few words about the current scenario in Africa. So I think that today's population, just to give a few figures, today's population is more than 1 billion, and by 2050, this is expected to double. After Asia, Africa is the region with the largest expected economic growth. So in the last 15 years, almost half of the 30 countries that have recorded the highest GDP growth were in Africa. We have seen an average GDP growth of about 4% until now, and the expectation is to have a similar rate in the future. So there is Africa is growing, and is growing also to respect the other country in the world. But Africa growth is characterized by heavily reliance on natural resources and the lack of industrial diversification. What I said at the very beginning, Africa is still growing, but is really growing mainly due to the oil and gas. And that is positive, but could be also not so positive. And we have also to say that development in Africa is not equal. We have the northern and the southern part that are more developed, and they have a per capita income of about $3,000. But we have in the central part, so the central region, we have a strong underdevelopment, and the per capita income is much less than half of what we have in the north, in the south. So, and in this area, energy scarcity and limited access to energy are more common. So we don't have, in the north we have, as you see, practically we cover 100%, so everybody has access to energy. In the southern part a little bit less, but in the central part there is no access to energy. So the access to energy that we have in the central part is based, and that is very, very strange, is based mainly on biomass. So biomass, coal, wood or charcoal, that are really very, very dangerous and damaging, and they can create a severe problem to the health. Just to give you a figures worldwide, the biomass utilization is causing about 4 million people die every year because of that. We have 4 million people died because of the utilization of biomass. Biomass is especially used in the houses for heating, for cooking, and that is really a big, big issue. Stronger than malaria or any. It's like a big war that is happening every year because of biomass. And in Africa we use about 50% so of the electricity or energy consumption is due to biomass. And just to talk about energy, we can say that Africa per capita energy consumption is among the lowest in the world, with 1/3 of China's consumption, 1/5 of Europe's, and 1/10 of the US. And that despite the fact that Africa has twice the oil and gas resources of the US. So it's a really rich country. And that we talk just about oil and gas, without talking about renewable. And if we go to the sub-Saharan, so when we talk about the central part of Africa, around 600 million people live without access to energy. And that is the main issue on which we are going to elaborate and understand what we can do. And when we look at the overall Africa in terms of energy consumptions, per capita is between 100 and 200 kilowatt hour, compared to 2,000 for Asia, 5,000 for Europe, and 10,000 kilowatt hour for the US. Clear that is the best and more important figures, but in any case, if you compare 100 and 200 kilowatts, you see that is very low. The International Energy Agency estimates that primary energy demand will increase by over 40% by 2030. But African energy mix has been almost unchanged in the last 10 years. And that remains unsustainable, because Africa is growing, and is growing at a good path, but the energy mix doesn't change, in spite they have a lot of energy. So biomass remain I think the main source of energy for Africa. And we said that is 50%. And we can say that in the 23 out of 42 countries in the sub-Saharan Africa, more than 90% of these populations using biomass. So in that region, so in the sub-Saharan, the issue is really important, because 90% is using biomass. What we talking about gas in Africa now, Africa is using more gas than before, but natural gas account only for 13% of the demand, and every year in Africa, gas flared generally. All Africa, they flare 30% of the gas consumption of the continent. So the flare amount of gas that is 30% of that what they use. So there is a big waste, and that flare is not just a waste because they are not able to transform this flare gas in energy for them, but also because of the CO2, because of the emissions that is producing. So we have two kinds of problem here. Hydro only produce around 1%. And the rest of renewables, so we talk about wind and solar, they represent 0.3%. So really very little figures. And that is a contradiction, as we said. It's a contradiction because it's a country with huge potential, almost unexploited, of clean energy. So we have a lot of clean energies. Now I have some figure about clean energy. So for gas, just in terms of reserves, we have much over 14,500 BCM, so BCM, billion of cubic meter. And that 14,500 is before the discovery of Mozambique, is not completely Mozambique inside, and before the discovery of Thor. And so that figures are much more important than that. And these 4,500 represent 7% of the worldwide gas reserves. So they have a very interesting portion of it. And this, just using this gas, this gas is enough and exceeding the future continent needs. And in terms of solar, the energy potential accounts for about 300,000 gigawatt. So they have a huge amount. That is the best place in the world in terms of solar. Not only because there are a lot of solar, but because there are a huge amount of acreage that they can use. And that is a point that we can maybe on which we can elaborate during the Q&A. Though they have, for hydroelectric, they have 283 gigawatt, and wind power 7,000, and for geothermal about 15. So all in all, they have absolutely energy, not just for them, but to satisfy also a major growth, but also to export. But at the moment, it's not the case. In terms of oil, they have a vast amount of oil reserves. They account for 125 billion barrels of oil. That's overall Africa. All these figures underline that Africa needs to develop a more integrated energy model and changing the energy mix, favoring cleaner energies. That is the point. And that must be done because Africa is growing, but nothing is changed. Africa is growing and is increasing the exports. So the money that we are investing, and we invest, I'm not just talking about Eni, but I'm talking about all the IOC, also the national oil company. They investing the money in exploration and production. They are exporting practically the totality of what they are producing. But you cannot export all this amount of energy if you are first, you don't think about your place. You don't think to use this energy to develop a better life, a better style of life, but also a different kind of energy mix. It's clear that biomass have to disappear. They cannot continue to use biomass. They cannot continue to use coal. That is true for Africa, but it's true also for Europe. And they have to increase gas and renewable. That is the two pillars, not just for Africa, but for everybody. But for Africa, it's clear because they have this kind of energy. So the top priority, just to, after talking about a different scenario, the figures, what they have, the top priority should be build an energy model that can support demographic growth, a more diversified economies, and a better social service. That are the main points that we are discussing with the different government. So to achieve this goal, the intervention should be focused on three main areas. The first areas is increase the development of hydrocarbon resources for domestic consumption. That is the first point. They have to take a serious decision, and that is more than a political decision, and not easy to take. But we have to use the fossil fuel, but especially gas, for the domestic consumption. And we said that always the IEA said that oil and gas will be the backbone of African energy system, satisfying almost 40% of their primary energy demand in the coming years. It's something that we can, for the next 20, 30, 40 years. And I think that this share can increase if you're going to replace all the biomass using gas. So I think that we have space to develop additional gas for Africa. The second point, the second priority, a second area of intervention is to change the energy mix, I said. We have to increase the renewables. We absolutely, I say we, but it's Africa that has to take a clear choice to increase renewable. And we have to reduce the dependence on imported fossil fuel, because we have to remember that Africa is importing products. So that is the other kind of paradox, because they have a lot of oil, they export oil, and they're importing products. And that is very huge cost. So when we talk about renewable, is also to reduce cost of importing oil, because we use a different kind of energy. I remember that most of the electricity in Africa, especially in the sub-Saharan, is coming from generators, so they use diesel. They're importing diesel to produce electricity. That is the most expensive way to produce electricity. Having gas, having renewable, having solar, having wind, we have to absolutely change direction. So the renewable is the second. So a different energy mix, production for the domestic, not just for export, and renewable. And the third priority is to develop energy infrastructures to ensure the availability of electricity everywhere. And there is a gap of infrastructures. So the infrastructure is a quite peculiar issue in Africa. You cannot have a trunk line as a huge grid and cover all the different remote areas, because it's not easy to build a huge grid. It's very expensive. We have a primary forest, we have savanna, we have mountains, we have rivers, we have a lot of hurdles. And then we have a seasonal raining, so it can happen that a strong rain can destroy everything. So I think that we have to have a combined strategy. We need grid, we need power plant, we need gas, but for the remote area, what we are doing is to use off-grid based on solar, for example. So you have different clusters that are not connected to the main grid at the beginning. It's less expensive. Surely, this place is not possible to send gas. Sometimes it's not possible to send fuel. For that reason, they are using biomass. So off-grid cluster can solve the transmission of electricity everywhere. And that is a combined grid solution. And so we saw the issue, we saw the priorities. Now, how a private sector can contribute. So in terms of investment, skills, and technology. It's clear that when I talk about private sector, I talk about my company, because what we have done from the very beginning. As I said, we started very early to give electricity. But before talking about what we have done, I'd like to talk about the cooperation model. You see that we have two periods, and we talk about Mattei formula that allow us to start up, break ice, and start growing in the 50s. But now we develop a different kind of cooperation model that we call Eni dual flag model. Means the dual flag means that there is our flag and the flag of the country together, not only on the our plant, our operation, but everywhere in the village, in the city, where we do our social, we give our social contribution, and the Eni model has 6 legs, like our dogs. You see, our dog has 6 legs, our model has 6 legs. It's just a coincidence, clearly. So we can see that the first point is, the first leg is production for domestic market, and that is a major point. You have to take a risk, you have to make a choice, you have to lose some profit now, and you have to look at to get some value in the future. So that is sometimes the contradiction between profit and value. It's clear for a company, profit is something that you have to deliver every day, every 3 months. You have to report your result, and if there is no profit, you can suffer. But you can explain to your shareholder that sometimes if you want to last for a long time, you have to put sometimes profit against value and decide what to do. It's clear that when you talk about production for domestic market, when I decide to, instead of send my gas through LNG and through long-term contract, get money, and instead of that I decide to develop and invest in a power plant and use this gas for domestic electricity production, that is the conflict between profit and value. But that is the first point. You have to take risks, otherwise you are not credible at all. Then is access to energy. So access to energy is an evolution, so you invest in the energy and then you try to spread out through grid, through infrastructure, to different combination of electricity from gas, electricity from renewable. You have to allow people to get this electricity. And then diversification on local economies. That is another issue between profit and value. I think that in long term our interest is that all these countries don't rely only on oil and gas. That is the worst thing that can happen. That means that the term is very short, because nobody can live just on oil and gas. And nobody can live thinking to be rich just for something that God gave us. We have to work. We have to develop different skills. And if you have just a work, an oil and gas man, you don't develop all the other skills that you need for your life. In the health, in the agriculture, in the infrastructure, in anything. So we have to really explain that we have to be rich. You have to maybe do less money, make less money in the oil and gas, but develop other kind of skill. And the private sector has a unique opportunity and a big responsibility to highlight this kind of stuff. We have really to invest on the diversification of the local economy. That is a priority. The diversification of energy mix for Africa is to delete completely, eliminate completely the biomass and use their own energy, and especially renewable. That is not just one of the legs for Africa, that is one of the legs also for us, for Europe. That is clearly that know-how and technology transfer, that is another important point when we said that we really put a lot of effort for the local content, and now 95% of our people are local. That means that in the future, as we are in Libya, for example, 100% of our people are Libyans. There is no what we call expatriates. That is a very bad name, because for me there is no expatriates or local is ENI people, that's all. But just to, for the sake of clarity, we have to, that is another important responsibility for a foreign investor to transfer know-how and technology, always, so education. And then we have something that is outside, is not to diversify local economies. I think that somebody that is going and work for 40 years in a country has to look after also the development of the healthcare and education. So that are the 6 legs of the model. And you see, we start with the Mattei formula, then we use this dual or double flag model, and that is the meaning of this model. And that is what allows us not just to start up and remain, but in the last 10 years to grow rapidly and positively. So, talking about us, what happened, so facts. Now we talk about concept and model. What happened in the access to energy? That is the main issue of today. We started in the 70s. In the 70s, we start to deliver electricity to the population, to the villages were close to our facilities. We started in Nigeria. In Nigeria, we are in the swamp, in the land area. We have a lot of what we call floor station. There are small plants. In each plant, we produce electricity for our internal consumption. And what we start immediately doing to deliver free of charge, clearly, electricity to the surrounding area. That we did in different parts of the world, not just in Africa. And then we had a different step. We start delivering gas for the domestic, and we have been the first. We started in Nigeria using the flare gas, but we started also in Libya without any contractual obligation. We started delivering gas for the to produce powers, and now we deliver more than 4 billion cubic meter per year to all the power plant in Libya, for example. So instead of selling to Italy, we sell to Italy because we have this, we have the green stream, so we sell to Italy, but more than half of what we produce, we send to the domestic, for the domestic disposal in Libya. We cover 100% of our production in Egypt, and now with the discovery of Zohr, we are going really to give a sort of independence, energy independence to Egypt, giving 100% of our production for the domestic market. It's clearly covered by agreement, discussing with the authorities, with securitization agreement, because we are facing big payment, but it's a very strong choice. We did that in Nigeria. I said in Nigeria in the early 2000s we decided we had this dilemma, profit and value, what we're going to do. We were flaring a lot of gas, so we decided to build a big power plant in Nigeria, a power plant of 480 megawatt, and we sent all our gas that before we were flaring to this plant. Now we are studying the possibility to double this plant. And this plant is not easy because we perform this plant in the Delta State. Delta State is really in the middle of the Niger Delta. So from a logistic point of view, was quite difficult. And we are covering 20% of the market, of the gas market. In Congo, we built the same kind of, we had the same kind of situation. We have a gas field. We had a very big gas flaring. Now we are injecting, but we are developing gas for a plant. We develop a plant of, at the moment, 300 megawatt that we are going to 450, and in the future, also we can double to reach 900. So considering Nigeria and Congo, we are covering 18 million people. And for an investment, in real term, an investment of $2 billion. $2 billion that consider the power plant and the grid. When we say, okay, why the dilemma? Why you said that is a dilemma between profit and value? Because if I put $2 billion in an upstream project, I have an internal rate of return of 20%, 80%, 18%. When I put $2 billion in a power plant, it's very good, but my internal rate of return is less than 7-6, or sometimes I struggle to recover my investment. But I think that is a question of long term. And when you do something like that, you're taking a risk. And that means that your presence in the country became completely different, because you became part of the country. And that's what has been our choice. So, no, I didn't follow what I prepared, so I have to. So we talk about gas. We talk about gas. We didn't talk about renewable. What about renewable? we have big figures, and we constructed, we prepare a model also for renewable, because now we want to be what we have done in the gas sector. We want to replicate in renewable. We start our renewable story a long time ago, also in different countries in Africa. In 92, 93, we had a big solar photovoltaic project in Congo, but also in other countries for water, and also for, I said, as a remote cluster to give electricity to small villages. Then we had the civil war, and then everything has been destroyed. So, but we are going ahead. We have these two kind of. We have a model with with 2 legs this time, not 6 legs. One is what we call brownfield. So what we are going to do is using our existing plant, our existing operations, and implement, in this case, a solar project in this brownfield. So we are people, we have everything, and so we can be faster. We use solar to replace the gas that we use for our internal consumptions, and we free up gas for the domestic. And that's for the small plant. For the big plant, we also send gas to the nearby villages, and that is a what we call a brownfield project. We have also greenfield initiatives, and that means what I said at the very beginning. We build clusters that are not close to our facility, but that we are not able to reach through grid, to lines, to big high tension lines or medium. So we are not able. So we built this green, always green initiatives, always solar. So we are working at the moment. We have a plan with an investment of about 300-400 million in the next 4 years to develop this model in different countries. And then we complement. So the ideal is to put together electricity from gas, electricity for renewable, and reduce the biomass. And that's what we are doing. We are going close to the end of my presentation. What I really think that what the private sector can do, in this case we're talking about us, is absolutely not enough. It's not enough, it's not coordinated, and it's something that we do proactively with the local community, with the local government, but I think we have to do much more. And I think that, as you see from the slide, I think that is in the interest of Europe to do much more. You know, Europe and Africa, we can say that are complementary, because Europe has no energy, is a net importer. It's going to be more and more a net importer. So Europe is in the need to diversify, to rely on different kind of supplier, more and more in the future. And Africa has a different kind of problems, because they have a lot of energy, but they are not able to exploit for them this energy. So I think that, and we are close. We have historical, geographical, cultural links. And just talking about figures, Africa represents 16% of the worldwide population, and they are using less than 5% of the worldwide energy. So nothing. Europe represents 7% of the worldwide population and is using more than 12% of energy. So it's clear that we can create a link. But what I think that we have to change our approach, because what happened until now, we have link clearly, but we don't need a mere link of I give you money, I develop your energy, as I said at the very beginning, I give you some technology and I take back energy. That is not a relationship. That is a commercial relationship, and that is not good. It's time to change. I think that Europe has a unique opportunity to work in Africa for Africa. So we have a private sector. The private sector can do, but I talk about risk. The private sector, especially when there is no money, they don't want to take risk. But we have bilateral agreement. We have a set of agreement between the European Union and the African unions, because there are more than one. I think that we can build something, and we can give the confidence to the private sector to do much more. And when you invest in Africa, it's not just because we don't want biomass. We want that Africa use gas, Africa use renewable. But when you have energy, there is a development. There are job creations. We can get more stability. We can also impact positively on the migration, because these people they can move because of wars, but they move out also because there is no job, there is no good life conditions. I think that this wedding between Europe and Africa has a lot of add value. So I think that we have to really create the condition, and the private sector is not enough. And the demonstration that we have been the only company to build a large combined cycle to use gas, because we took risk. Now we did in Congo and Nigeria, now we are going to do in Angola and Mozambique. But we need coordination, and we need also policy, because we have also to change the energy mix. So I leave you with this thought, with this view about the future. I thank you for listening to me, and thank you to invite me here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Descalzi. This is really very impressive. I mean, you reminded us the challenges of Africa, but also the potential in Africa, and also it was very interesting for us to understand your philosophy, starting with Enrico Mattei, but also going to the next generations, and the fact that rate of return is not everything for your business in Africa was definitely very helpful for us to understand your business there. Now, we would like to get some questions from our colleagues to Mr. Descalzi. While our ambassadors are preparing their questions, if I may ask you one question, Claudio. Now, when you look at the recent discoveries, it is, I mean, we are always in the headlines. The Mozambique, Congo, recently Egypt, Zoe. Are we lucky? And why it is always the ENI in the recent times that we hear the ENI coming with these impressive the discoveries? What is the secret of that? Are you luckier than the others?
No, you said. No, we are really very lucky.
Okay, I got the answer.
I'm very lucky. No, I'm very lucky that I work in ENI. That is a reality. I'm very lucky that I work in a company that made different choices. And when in 2008 we decided, we had a different strategy. We decided really to put all our efforts on exploration. So we reorganized all our exploration strategy, model, department, people. We invest a lot of R&D, and we made a different move. We didn't make any big acquisition. We didn't acquire companies. We did acquire assets. We started really from exploration assets because we thought to have the skills, but we built the skills. So when I say lucky because we made these kind of choices. Now they are paying out, and we are very happy. But they're paying out also in the good way in this period, because this period the price is very low, and when we made a choice to go for conventional assets, so shallow water or onshore, or in any case assets that are not very expensive, has been very strategic, because I don't think that is important to look at the price. I don't want to get crazy and understand what the price tomorrow, what the price after tomorrow. You really have to build a company that can be sustainable at a very low price. No way. So you have to work at $40, $50. So you have to look at cost more than price, the oil price. You have to look at your cost. That is my answer.
Thank you. You are lucky and happy at the same time. So excellent. So let's move to the ambassadors. We start with the United States, followed by Portugal. Mr. Ambassador, please.
Thanks, Dr. Biro. Thank you, sir, for the excellent presentation. And also, I'd like to commend the work that has been done by IEA as it relates to the topic of energy prospects in sub-Saharan Africa. As I noted, energy is extremely vital for economic development, especially given the fact that 2/3 of the population in sub-Saharan Africa do not have access to electricity, or half of the population live in extreme poverty. The U.S. government has been actively engaged in an innovative partnership to develop access to electricity in sub-Saharan Africa since President Obama launched Power Africa in 2013. I was a part of the program when I led the U.S. government's Millennium Jobs Corporation. We work extensively in the region, working with the private sector, because we know that governments or investments from development assistance agencies alone is not sufficient to bring about economic prosperity or energy security. So we thank you and salute you for all the work you're doing in the region, because I think you're helping your constituencies, the stockholders, to bring profits. And the countries are being assisted through investments in terms of their desire to be a prosperous country one day. My question to you is, in my visits in those countries, particularly as it relates to minerals, it has been a somewhat controversial issues, because many of those companies in the past have not paid what they consider to be a fair amount. And because the way they are structured in some cases and not being very transparent, people have a lot of concerns and ideas. Now, having said that, I don't know a lot about how the oil companies are structuring some of the investments, but how are you looking? I know you're there to make money, have to make money, otherwise you shouldn't be there. But how are they being structured to make sure that it's a win-win for all? You and the countries that have the resources. Thank you.
Now, let me turn to Portugal, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you very much. For inviting Mr. Descalzi today. For Portugal, Africa is a priority in all senses. I mean, priority for Europeans, but priority for the worldwide. You mentioned, Mr. Descalzi, that on the biomass issue, the domestic consumption, and it's a problem, a healthy problem first and foremost. Do you see any space for the renewables, particularly the solar, in the domestic consumption beyond the hydrocarbon resources? Because for many families, households, this is what they have at their reach, what they can reach immediately is the biomass. How fast do you think the incentives are there to move from this biomass very unhealthy and mortal usage to a more healthy domestic usage? The second point has to do with the diversification. You have been investing long in diversification. You mentioned Eni is investing in agriculture. Then you also are, I think, also somehow partners in the education and in the health system. I wonder, what is the space, how do you see the space, not only for Eni, but for energy company, on being a social partner? We know that this is vital, and I will now relate to Mozambique. Mozambique is a good, very, very big hope, huge potential is out there, but there is a tremendous difficulty move from potential to act with that potential. Security, problem of coordination, absorption capacity. There is a linkage between the civil society and the political system. What are the challenges you face in a country like Mozambique that has a huge potential, but it's at the brink of a very huge economic crisis? Finally, on China and Eni, how do you relate with the Chinese model and your model? Because I think you have mentioned profit, value. I think in the end, value will also bring profit. But how do you see these moving on in Africa? Thank you.
So, Claudio, would you take them one question from US and 3 questions from Portugal? So, this is,
So I'm going to answer the first questions, and I don't really know all about mineral. In the exploration and production, as I told at the very beginning, we have contracts, we have tenders. There is practically sometimes direct negotiation for some assets and following the rules or conditions or laws of the countries, but normally is a tender. At least that is not an extension of what we are. So we have a contract. So the contract is a law of the country, parliament, and in these contracts there is a share of profit, and few share profits, and normally Africa we don't have a concession agreement like in US or in Italy or in some other countries. You have a PSC, so a share of revenues, and profit share contract, and you have a sliding scale. So sometimes it's based on internal rate of return. So if you reach an internal rate of return, then the split between profit between the second and the first party, so the international company and the national company, change. And so we have rules. I said at the beginning, we try to change a little bit these rules to increase the profit. That is not a mere fiscal drainage, but also is a participation in the project. So we have stringent rules, and especially for the major company like us and our peers that we are in the stock exchange. You have to, in a very transparent way, you have to show all your data. And that we do. In Nigeria also we present, we share, from an informatic point of view, our data, not just on the figures in terms of bonus or royalties or tax, but also about what we spend in the sustainability projects. So I think that I don't know. Maybe we have some cases, not but we're for a small company where there are some arbitration cases. But for the big company, there is a maximum of transparency in terms of what you give, what you get. Going to the other questions, I think. The time to market, the time to market to be able to remove the biomass. I thought that is not an issue that a private company can solve by itself, because it is a big problem. When we think that in 23 countries out of the 42 in the sub-Saharan Africa, 90% of the people has no access to energy, is a huge number. In the rural situation, so far from the city, I think 100% they have to use biomass. The project we did small photovoltaic project based for practically tailor-made for houses, small houses. Was to have just to produce electricity, light, and cold, and to also to be able to make food conservations. You can do it, and you cover maybe 200, 1,000, 2,000 people. that is not enough. For that reason, we need a real link between different kind of countries in Africa and with Europe. If there is a policy, you have a tax relief. So we have a lot of operators, not just in oil and gas, but contractors, and you have tax reliefs or that you can get in your country, or other kind of situation that where if you perform a project coordinated with the country, so it must be the national energy strategy with different points. So each move has to start from the country. It's sovereign, and the country has to decide how to move. And then you can have facility in the country, a facility maybe in Europe if you're coming from Europe. If you perform projects, and you can go ahead. That, you know, all the remote situation, the villages and the places that I visited, I spent 18 years in Africa, so I think I know quite well. There's no way to get access with the normal grid. So we have to work on renewable, and they have. And you must have a national energy strategy, and then bilateral agreement with Europe, I said, where we can promote this kind of initiatives. But it's serious stuff. It's not something that we can just talk here as an idea. It's something that you have to start doing and showing that you can do, and that the private sector, looking at value instead of profit, can do. But then it must become a priority. So the time to market can be infinite if you don't do anything. And we are continue talking about there are risks, there are a lot of things, but then they don't hit. They don't have electricity. So I think that we have to move. We can do as a private company. It's not enough. It's really a drop in the sea. So I think that for that reason we have a political responsibility. And we have to be close. We have to be close to the issue and not just talk from Rome, Paris, or London. We have to go there and work and talk with the authorities and make a plan that is not just our plan, but is our plan in terms of European, but is a common plan, is a common program. Another, you know, how you can say oblige or push the private sector is to put this kind of projects in the contract. So in Mozambique we put in our contract to build, but we decide to build a power plant or to deliver 25% of our gas in the future to the country. But then you must have a project for the country, because if you send a huge amount of gas and then you don't have facilities, you cannot stand. So everything must be coordinated. I think these countries are well prepared to do that, and they have a clear idea. Mozambique has a clear idea. Really, they care, they mind about their energy program and strategy. They want the president, the minister, they want really to increase the energy utilization in the country. And now they have the possibility to have a lot of gas. So they can build plant, lay out grid, and spread out the energy in the country. I think that they will succeed because they are really determined to do that. China model, maybe I didn't really well understand the questions. How we deal with China model in Africa, you say? I think we are partnering with Chinese in some joint venture where we operate. I think that the China model is a little bit different because they are working more in infrastructure than in the primary resources like oil and gas in development. They have some company, but they are more engaged in infrastructure than oil and gas. Then they are paid through gas or oil, I don't know, but honestly we don't have a strong connection with we are not overlapping our models at the moment.
Thank you very much. So we have 3 more questions, and afterwards we will finish this session. Netherlands, Mr. Ambassador, followed by Russia and Total.
Thank you, Fatih, and thanks a lot to Mr. Descalzi for a very, very interesting presentation indeed. I particularly like very much your message of, well, you cannot live on oil and gas alone. You have to develop it, but then also use it for diversification. Now, this is where my question is going. You touched a little bit on, at the end of your presentation, on the role of policies. Could you tell us a little bit more about what is your message, what is your key message actually to policymakers, both in Africa but also in Europe, working with Africa? And the second question is, what is the role of the development banks? I didn't hear you mention that. Are you working with African Development Bank, with the World Bank, since, I mean, they, since some time already, have this as a priority? Supposedly, at least if you read the papers, they are putting more emphasis and putting more money into this, yet it seems to be not achieving that much. So what's going wrong there? What do you see? What should be improved in the role of the World Bank and others? Thank you.
Let me just get this. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Russia?
Mr. Descalzi, thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. My first question is about Mozambique. This huge offshore discoveries that were made by your company and by some other companies, including US Anadarko. Do you think in the current situation on the gas market, you will be able to realize the full potential of those huge offshore discoveries? I know that some investment decisions have been postponed. What future do you see for these offshore fields? And my second question is not on Africa, but on Europe, where we are also seeing very interesting developments. The European gas market is becoming more flexible and more diversified in terms of both pricing arrangements and list of suppliers. In your company strategy, what future do you see for Russia as maybe a source for investment in gas projects and as a supplier, of course, for European gas market? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Total?
Yes, thank you. I'm not an ambassador. I'm the president of Downstream for Total. But more than that, I'm an African. I was born in Africa. I spent quite a number of years there. Just to concur with what Mr. Descalzi was saying, and I would like to give you just some figures on what can be done. In the late 70s, I was marketing manager of Total in Senegal. Then in West Africa, those who are my age would recall, there was huge drought in West Africa. Governments of the region get together and had an agreement with the European Union then to support LPG policy in West Africa. European Union came with subsidies on cylinders. Governments in turn were asked to put proper regulatory framework. The consequence of that is that today, in my native country in Senegal, the consumption of LPG per capita per annum is 8 kilo. The consumption of LPG in Kenya, where they didn't have such an issue then, is 2 kgs per year per capita. I mean, it shows that there's a quid pro quo that can be done between Europe and government, where probably governments on this side will commit, and on the other side, because to implement an LPG policy, you need proper regulatory framework, because no company will take risk, because LPG comes with safety issues. Therefore, you need to have commitments on the other side. Another example, and my last conversation with Christophe de Margerie the Friday before he passed away was about access to energy in Africa. In the last 3 years, we sold 1.5 million solar lamps in Africa, worth ex-works $8. That means that in 3 years, a company, and any other company would have done that with commitment. We've been able to give access to energy, if you consider that one lamp will serve 5 people, to 7.5 million people. Yet, we could have done twice that, because out of the 25 countries where we are selling these lamps, half of them are putting taxes on those small lamps that are worth $8, because the customs people have just decided that this is not priority for the country, therefore they are going to, I mean, if governments on this side had come, and because what is at stake for budgets for governments is meaningless. If there was a policy on that, probably we will be able to double those sales. That is the reality. Therefore, I think that we all, and I 100% concur, I mean, it is possible. It can be done. It's a question of commitment on both sides. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One very final question from Turkey.
Thank you, Dr. Birol, and sorry for coming a bit late. We would like to thank Mr. Descalzi for the very interesting presentation, and also thank Dr. Birol and his team to host such distinguished guests. We follow this series with great interest. Today's topic is very much dear to our heart. As you might recall, in October 2015, during our G20 presidency, we hosted the first G20 energy ministers, and also we hosted a conference with the participation of the African ministers on access to energy in sub-Saharan Africa. So access to energy for all was at the center of our approach during our G20 presidency. So in that sense, we very much followed with great interest what you have told about your company's activities in Africa. My question is somehow related to Africa as well, but it's about the Zohr prospect actually. Completion of the development of Zohr field is planned to take place within a year, and within 1 year, and the plateau level production is set to reach within 2.5 years. Isn't it a bit ambitious to set these dates for such a huge gas field? This is the first part of the question, and according to some industry sources, we are hearing that some third parties might be interested in buying stakes. So, could you please comment on that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, for these 4 questions, I turn to Claudio for quick answers. Thank you.
Questions. So for the first question about policy, I think that our colleague from Total gave a first answer, and I share the point. That is possible. We would just want to be clear in our mind and do things. I think for the biomass is a huge problem. So I think that we need really a big project to fight biomass. We have to advertise it. We have to put the best people, the best company, and start a strong project to fight this issue that is more than an issue of access to energy. It's really to save people. And I think that is something that we can also propose as a European communities. And Africa, I think, is ready. And the solution is pass-through renewable, as said. But for small projects, I think for access to energy and renewable project by project inside a national or country strategy with the help of Europe, But for biomass, I think that we need a strong push, a big and strong push. The role of banks, you are right, he didn't talk about banks, and that is my set of mind that is quite sick, because we always use our equity. We are too rich, and before, now we have to talk. Now we are talking about with banks. No, but it's true. We are talking with the World Bank. There are lots of possible initiatives, and these countries are working. Then we have to define priority, because they have there are a lot of things to do. And when you talk with some countries, not just the African countries, the first thought is about infrastructure. And I think that infrastructure is important, but in Africa has been made much more infrastructure side than on energy side, because you think, I have oil and gas, but then you don't use your oil and gas, you use biomass. So I think that they have to switch to a different kind of priority. And banks can work and give a strong help on that. And you are perfectly right. Try to go fast, because Mozambique gas versus market. I try to put together the two questions on Mozambique gas, European gas, and the market in general. So gas is quite depressed. Oil lost 70%, 1.5 years. Gas lost generally an average of 50%. So it's quite a lot. And I answer also about Mozambique project. We are not slowing down project. We just got the FID, the POD approval from the government in our first floating LNG project, Coral. That is a floating LNG in our area. Is 100% entirely in Area 4. So we have the plan of development approved, the environmental study approved, and we finalized the GSA, so the gas sales agreement. So all the conditions are in place. We have just to go through the last point, that is the project financing. But it's practically certain that we can take the FID this year for Coral. So we go ahead. So we sold the gas. In Europe, the gas is unfortunately we are consuming less gas than what we thought 6-7 years ago. In 2008, we thought to have a consumption of 700 billion cubic meters per year. We are 450. We are 420. In 2016, we are consuming more gas. But what happened with the shale gas development in the U.S., that the coal really was really cheap, and instead of increasing gas, we increased coal consumption, and that is not good at all. So we lost practically 100. Respect to 2008, we lost 100 billion cubic meter of consumption per year in Italy. In Europe. Europe has all the infrastructure. In Europe we have about 670 billion cubic meter of capacity per year in terms of infrastructure. We are using 200 billion less, so we have room to improve. We have 200 billion of LNG capacity. We are just using 20%, so the gas dropped down. We have different hubs. So the long-term contract that we had in the past, they are fighting with the hubs, the European hubs, the Italian hubs. So the gas is living a crisis, and that is crazy, because it's the best partner for the renewable if we look at the future, because in terms of emission is the less dangerous, we can say, of the best among the fossil fuels. I think that my view for gas after the COP21 and after big step that, for example, UK took very efficiently, they practically shutting down all the coal power plant. They are promoting gas. They reduce in 1 year 25% their emissions. They have been very effective. They took the right decisions. I think that Europe is going to follow. I hope so. We have really to push for a strong gas advocacy. We have renewable, but not enough. We were talking about energy mix for Africa. We have a serious problem of energy mix in Europe as well. But I'm sure the gas is going to grow. I think that we can fill this gap. We have to fill a gap of 200 billion per year cubic meter of capacity. But we are also to think that Europe is a net importer. We are importing 82% of our gas needs. And the domestic production is going down. It's going down, down, down. So I think that we have to fill a gap in 4 or 5 years of about 200 billion. And Russia is the first supplier. But I think as a European that we cannot live without Russia. That is clear, but we have to diversify. For that reason, when I talk about this corridor, South-North corridor, that is beneficial for Africa, beneficial for Europe, is also to complement this growth. And from a commercial point of view, we have to diversify, especially because Europe has no energy. So if you don't have energy, you have to think to a diversification. I have to think from a commercial point of view, from a energy security point of view. And that is the energy, if you talk with Šefčovič, that is the strategy. So energy union is based on that, diversification, gas advocacy, and but as I said, we cannot live without Russia, because that is Russia has the possibility to export 240 billion cubic meter to Europe, is exporting now 140. So we are a big customer altogether. Then Turkey is a big customer. So now Russia is satisfying with partially the LNG that is growing, but with Norway, with Libya, with Algeria, practically all the needs in Europe, but we'll need more gas in the future. It's not just a hope. Zohr is not. I don't know who asked about Zohr. Yeah. Zohr is not in production by the end of 2016, not next year. In the end of 2017. You can say that is challenging. I can tell you what happened. We took an FID in 6 months. Normally FID, we have an FID in 2-3 years. So we have been fast, and we have the FID. We already commissioned, all the long lead items in terms of umbilicals, the first pipeline. We have the barge to lay down the pipeline. We have already, and we committed for 3 years the rig. We already started the civil work. And that is, the first phase will be 1 billion scf per day, and the second phase is up to 2.8 scf per day. It's challenging, but we are very focused. And the Egyptian government is more focused than us. I think I answered to all of the question. Yeah.
I think it's a huge project, and it can, if implemented successfully, it can reshape the economic future of the country, of Egypt, substantially. So, and also, Claudio, we are working a lot on this energy access issue. My colleague, Paul Simons, just came from China, and in the G20 discussions there, energy access is definitely an issue, following the example of Turkey. Now, Asia, more and more countries, governments are interested to find a solution to energy access issue, and the private sector, such as Eni, will definitely play an important role for the solution. Now, we are at the end of this session, but as usual, we have a standing question to our guests here. We have a lot of IEA colleagues around this table and our ambassadors. And we would like to ask them, what piece of advice you would like to give the IEA and the IEA family that we should do more or less, better or worse, if you want us to do? You are a lucky and happy company, so as you said, and we are also, I don't know if we are lucky, but we are happy as well. We are happy. At least we are fundamentally happy, I should say. So we would like to hear from a lucky and happy company. What do you think the IEA should do more or less? Any suggestions from you?
This is the more difficult question because it's not easy. You're my host. What I can say, you are perfect. No, I think that the effort of the International Energy Agency is important. Is a reference for us. We follow, we read, we try to follow you. So it's a sort also you are educating all the market, giving data, giving statistics, making analysis. I think that, and now we are, for example, everybody talk about prices. And when you look at what happened to price and cost, prices dropped of 70% in the last couple of years, more or less, 1.5 years, and cost drop of 24%. So I think that in this sort of analysis, looking just to the commodities is important, but as I told you before, I don't look at all. I cannot look because nobody is able to forecast, and I think that we have started working also on the cost side, because what happened in the oil industry, oil and gas industry in the last 15 years, where the price went up, I think that we lost a little bit. We have been lost in terms of cost. We thought that everything is affordable, and it's not right that. So analysis on cost and how we can improve, and how the companies has to improve in terms of efficiency, and be less fat, and change the mentality, and think that we have to fight every day for what we get. For that reason, then you are happy because you are doing something. And so I think they expand also the knowledge. That is my humble suggestion to the organization that is really doing very well.
Thank you very much, Claudio. So please join me to thank Mr. Descalzi, one of the leading figures in the global energy industry, coming here just for us after a very long trip to share his views about Africa's development, and also sharing with us how the ENI evolved from the times of the Enrico Mattei and to Mr. Descalzi today. Thank you very much, Claudio. Very many thanks. Thank you. So we have some drinks outside. We invite you some drinks outside. Thank you.